श्री कृष्ण परिवर्तिता परमानंद पापाय ब्रह्मवर्षक्षरायते सर्वदा सर्वसेव्यो श्री कृष्ण नमस्ते मदेकं त्वं संगे मद्गुरु बुद्धिपादनं नमस्तारकं भाग्यवदानं नमस्ते साधु साधुतादाय अतिनीचोच्चताकर आनवचकदाचिन्मां प्रेरणा स्मृत्कण्ठयोस्पुर ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय. What is this? This is here is 32 and here is 37.
We'll start 32.
Should be 32.
I mean, from commentary actually it was, but
भगवद्वीर्यं कालरूपः तत्प्रभावः तेन प्रेरितः स शब्दः केन गृह्यते इत्यपेक्षायामः. One. What is this? Okay. First of all, as an introduction, I'll read out this Bhavasa Deepika. Tanmatra उत्पत्ति पूर्वकम आकाशादि महाभूत उत्पत्तिं तल्लक्षणं चाह. Then he describes the generation of the tanmatras. The tanmatras are the sense objects: sound, touch, form, taste, smell. And after that, he is going to describe the generation of the mahabhutas, the gross elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether, as well as their defining characteristics. He does it in 15 verses, beginning with the current verse, text 32. Here, Bhagavad Virya Choditat, impelled by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This here, the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the time factor. Agitated by the energy of the Supreme Personality of God. That is actually the time factor. Tat prabhavaha tena preritat. So impelled by that, then this transformation happens. And then the element sound is manifested. How is that sound grasped? Or how is that sound perceived? Anticipating this. Yes, Shrotram tu Shabdagam. Shrotram, Taijas Ahankara Kavyam. The ears are the effect of the Taijas Ahankara. Tatra Shabdam Lakshiti Prapnavati. So the faculty of hearing, the sense of hearing, it moves towards and attains sound. It appears from this verse that all the objects of sense gratification are the products of egoism and ignorance. It is understood from this verse that by agitation of the element of egoism and ignorance, the first thing produced was sound, which is a subtle form of ether. It is said also in the Vedanta Sutra that sound is the origin of all objects of material possession, and that by sound one can also dissolve this material existence. Anavriti Shabda means liberation by sound. This is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's explanation of the last of the Vedanta Sutras. Anavritti Shabda. But Bhagavatam also ends with Nama Sankirtanam Yasya Sarva Papa Pranashanam. Matches. The entire material manifestation began from sound, then sound can also end material entanglement if it has a particular potency. The particular sound capable of doing this is a transcendental vibration, Hare Krishna. Our entanglement in material affairs has begun from material sound. Now we must also purify that sound in spiritual understanding. There is sound in the spiritual world also. If we approach that sound, then our spiritual life begins, and the other requirements for spiritual advancement can be supplied. We have to understand very clearly that sound is the beginning of the creation of all material objects for our sense gratification. Similarly, if sound is purified, our spiritual necessities also are produced. Our spiritual necessities also are produced from sound. Here it is said that from sound the ether became manifested, and that the air became manifested from ether. How the ethereal sky comes from sound, how the air comes from sky, and how fire comes from air will be explained later on. Sound is the cause of the sky, and sky is the cause of Shrotram, the ear. The ear is the first sense for receiving knowledge. One must give oral reception to any knowledge one wants to receive, either material or spiritual. That for Shrotram means the faculty of hearing. It's very important. The Vedic knowledge is called Shruti. The word Shruti and the word Shrotram are connected. Shrotram, the sense of hearing. Knowledge has to be received by hearing, but hearing only can we have access to either material or sense, spiritual enjoyment. In the material world, we manufacture many things for our material comfort simply by hearing. They are already there, but just by hearing, one can transform them. If you want to build a very high skyscraper, this does not mean that we have to create it. The materials for the skyscraper, wood, metal, earth, etc., are already there, but we make our intimate relationship with those already created material elements by hearing how to utilize them. Modern economic advancement for creation is also a product of hearing. And similarly, one can create a favorable field of spiritual activities by hearing from the right source. Arjuna was a gross materialist in the bodily conception of life and was suffering from the bodily concept very acutely. But simply by hearing, Arjuna became a spiritualized, Krishna conscious person. Hearing is very important, and that hearing is produced from the sky. By hearing only can we make proper use of that which already exists. The principle of hearing, to properly utilize preconceived materials, is applicable to spiritual paraphernalia as well. We must hear from the proper spiritual source. So the idea is that even let's say, take this example of building a skyscraper. So we already learn from those who know. So it is through hearing, it is through learning, it is through transmission of information that we can create a skyscraper. It's not simply through the elements. We may have all these ingredients, wood, metal, earth, etc. But we have to learn from somebody who knows. In today's world, they don't use expressions like sound, hearing. Instead, they use expressions like information, transmission of information, and so on. Yes.
So, in 30th verse, when there was description of sleep, so I was wondering, sleep,
What?
sleep, Prabhu, Nidra.
Sleep. Okay.
So this sleep, is it needed for body, or is it needed for smooth functioning of intelligence, or both?
It looks like it's needed for both. It's needed for the subtle body, it's needed for the gross body.
Okay, bro.
Okay. 33. Arthashrayatvam shabdasya drashtur lingatvam cha tanmatratvam cha nabhaso lakshanam kavayo viduhu. Persons who are learned in our true knowledge define sound as that which conveys the idea of an object, indicates the presence of a speaker screened from our view. That means it indicates that somebody is conveying that idea of an object. Who that person may not be visible to us, and constitutes a subtle form of ether. This is information. Information means there has to be an information source. Shabdasya lakshanam kaveha ahuhu. Learned persons state the definition of shabda, sound. Kim tat, what is that? Arthashrayatvam, arthavachakatvam. It is that which conveys information. What is it? Drashtulingatvam. Right, that looks like some typing error. Drashtur lingatvam. It is that which indicates the presence of the seer. Ramakrishna Leela Drashtri Vyasa Shukadi Gyapakatvam. Just as we have pastimes of Lord Rama, Lord Krishna, and somebody has seen them in Samadhi, like Vyasadev, Shukadev, Valmiki, and so on. So that sound itself makes us, the sound, the information pertaining to Ram Leela, Krishna Leela, and so on, that informs us that somebody has conveyed it to us. Yadva, alternate meaning. Kudyantaritasyapi vaktuhu gyapakatvam. Or it can refer to this, the presence of a speaker screened from our view. Tatha Navasaha Tanmatratvam Akasha Sukshma Rupatvam. Moreover, sound is the subtle form of Akasha. It is a Tanmatra of Nabhas. It is a Tanmatra of ether. It is a sense, it is the object of, it is a sense object that is embedded in ether. It is very clear herein that as soon as we speak of hearing, there must be a speaker. Without a speaker, there is no question of hearing. Therefore, the Vedic knowledge, which is known as Shruti, is that which is received by hearing. It's also called Apaurusheya. Typing mistake. Apaurusheya means not spoken by any person, materially created. It is stated in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, Tene Brahma Hrida. The sound of Brahman. Here, Brahma means Shabda Brahma. The sound of Brahman or Veda was first impregnated into the heart of Brahma, the original learned man, Adikavalye. How did he become learned? Whenever there is learning, there must be a speaker and the process of hearing. But Brahma was the first created being. Who spoke to him? Since no one was there, who was the spiritual master to give knowledge? He was the only living creature. Therefore, the Vedic knowledge was imparted within his heart by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated within everyone as Paramatma. Vedic knowledge is understood to be spoken by the Supreme Lord, and therefore it is free from the defects of material understanding. Material understanding is defective. If we hear something from a conditioned soul, it is full of defects. All material and mundane information is tainted, contaminated by illusion, error, cheating, and imperfection of the senses. Brahma, Pramada, Pralipsa, Karana, Apatava. Because Vedic knowledge was imparted by the Supreme Lord, who is transcendental to material creation, it is perfect. If we receive that Vedic knowledge from Brahma and disciplic succession, then we receive perfect knowledge. Every word we hear has a meaning behind it. As soon as we hear the word water, there is a substance, water, behind the word. Similarly, as soon as we hear the word God, there is a meaning to it. If we receive that meaning and explanation of God from God himself, then it is perfect. But if we speculate about the meaning of God, it is imperfect. Bhagavad Gita, which is the science of God, is spoken by the personality of God himself. This is perfect knowledge. Mental speculators or so-called philosophers who are researching what is actually God will never understand the nature of God. The science of God has to be understood in disciplic succession from Brahma, who was first instructed about knowledge of God by God himself. We can understand the knowledge of God by hearing Bhagavad Gita from a person authorized in the disciplic succession. When we speak of hearing, of seeing, that must be formed by our sense perception. Beginning experience is the sky. Sky is the beginning of form, and from the sky, other forms emanate. Therefore, the objects of knowledge and sense perception begin from the sky. Here, sky refers to what? Because the sense object if vision is rupa or form is tanmatra, I think this paragraph is meant to come somewhere else, not here. 34. भूतानां क्षिद्रदातृत्वं बहिरन्तरमेव च प्राणेन्द्रियात्मधिष्ण्यत्वं नभस्सो वृत्तिलक्षणम्. The activities and characteristics of the ethereal element can be observed as the accommodation of room for the eternal and internal existences of all living entities, namely the field of activities of the vital air, the senses, and the mind. The vital air is prana. Sense is indriya. The mind is referred to here as atma. Akashasya lakshanamaha. This is the definition of Akasha. Then I will come back to this paragraph later. Shidra Datritvam, Avakasha Datritvam. It is the accommodation of room. Bahirantara Vyavahara Aspadatvam. It is the shelter for everything internally and externally existing. It is what we call in modern scientific language space. Pranendriya manasam dhishnyatvam nadyadi chitra rupena ashrayatvam is the field of activities for the prana, the indriyas, and the mind, which means it is the shelter. I do not know what this means, but it says that it is apparently there are holes within the nadis. But as far as I know, nadis are not actually the physical veins. They are subtle. It looks like Akasha is embedded inside it. Nabhasaha vrittibhi dharmaihi lakshanam. These are the characteristics of Nabhas or sky. This way. Nadi themselves are the chidras. I have not studied Ayurveda, so I am not able to understand how Nadi is connected to Akasha. The mind, the senses, and the vital force or living entity have forms, though they are not visible to the naked eye. Form exists in subtle existence in the sky. And internally, it is perceived as the veins within the body and the circulation of the vital air. Externally, there are invisible forms of sense objects. The production of the invisible sense objects is the external activity of the ethereal element, and the circulation of vital air and blood is its internal activity. That subtle forms exist in the ether has been proven by modern science by transmission of television, by which forms or photographs of one place are transmitted to another by the action of the ethereal element. That is very nicely explained here. This verse is the potential basis of great scientific research work, for it explains how subtle forms are generated from the ethereal element, what their characteristics and actions are, and how the tangible elements, namely air, fire, water, and earth, are manifested from the subtle form. Mental activities or psychological actions of thinking, feeling, and willing are also activities on the platform of ethereal existence. The statement in Bhagavad Gita that the mental situation at the time of death is the basis of the next birth is also corroborated in this verse. Mental existence transforms into tangible form as soon as there's an opportunity due to contamination or development of the gross elements from subtle form. So Akasha appears to be the via media between subtle matter and other forms of gross matter. Just like we know, the reincarnation researchers, they know that sometimes there are cases, somebody has been shot in the head, let's say, in the skull, in the head, somewhere in the head. Then somebody else claims to be this person, some child claims to be this person since the beginning of childhood. So then when they do this research, they find out from the previous person's death report and the autopsy report, they calculate where the bullet went through. Say it went through one place and came through the other place, the opposite. They note those locations. And in the child also, there's a depression in the head, in the same areas. So then how does that happen? So it looks like somehow Akasha is connected. The element of ether is connected here. Something happens into the gross body that is imprinted on the subtle body. The subtle body, the soul with the subtle body leaves that gross body, goes to the next body. And from that imprint, again, it comes back to the gross body of the next incarnation. That somehow ether is connected there. This all requires more studies and research. Okay, 35. Nabhasa shabdatanmatra kalagatya vikurvataha sparsho bhavat tato vayus tok sparshasya cha sangraha. From ethereal existence, which evolves from sound, the next transformation takes place under the impulse of time. And thus a subtle element touch, and then the air and sense of touch become prominent. Shabda eva tanmatram yasya tatha bhutat nabhasaha sakashat. Shabda alone is a tanmatra for nabhas, ether. From that, by the touch of time, then we have the sense object of touch, from which Vayu comes. Now notice this very interesting thing. First of all, Tanmatra, then comes the Mahabhuta. Now in today's world, they calculate everything in terms of the Mahabhutas first. First of all, they have worked out the elements in a very different manner. When we are in school, we are taught the periodic table of various elements. And these are based on number of atoms and so on. But in Vedantic systems, we are not taught in this manner. It starts with consciousness. First of all, I am conscious. Secondly, I'm conscious of something which is not conscious. So that which is the object of my consciousness and which is not conscious is defined as matter. So first of all, consciousness is studied, then the object of consciousness or matter is then studied. Consciousness simply means awareness. And even when we are aware of matter, we are aware of matter in 5 different ways in terms of sound, touch, form, taste, smell. So therefore, these sensations are called sense objects because these sensations are also experienced in the dream state. We see many things, touch many things, but there is no tangible like in gross reality. There's nothing tangible we are touching. So from this, we understand that the sensations are primary, and that which we sense, that is secondary. So in the wakeful state, gross matter is that which embeds these sensations, you can say, or which are objects of the sensations. So first of all, sound, then comes ether, then comes touch, then comes air. Now here ether can be taken as space, and sound should be understood in terms of information. It is not just a vocal sound. Because in a dream also we hear. Now, if you define sound as that which we vibrate and which brings about auditory waves and so on, then in a dream these things are not happening. And how are we hearing? So therefore, sound is defined in terms of transmission of information. Then we come to touch and then air. Air is better understood in terms of the state of matter known as gas. So then these Mahabhutas can just be understood to be various states of matter. In physics in school, we learn about the solid state, the liquid state, and the gaseous state. But it appears that there are actually 5 states of matter. Earth is the equivalent of solid, because you can see by the definition of each of these. Water is the equivalent of liquid. Fire, Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj said this can be taken as a radiant energy. So that radiant energy would be another state of matter. Earth, water, fire, air, that easily corresponds to the gaseous state of matter. And then we have space. Space is considered in theoretical physics to be also some type of matter. At least it is the accommodation for other forms of matter. So here we notice that first of all touch comes, then we get air. Saratadarshini. Shabda eva tanmatram yasya tatha bhuta navasasya kasha sangraha samyak grishyate anaya iti karanaya. So then air itself is the very totality of touch in a metaphorical sense. No. From Vayu and then Twak comes. Twak is the sense of touch. Twak means skin. But it is that which can grasp touch. Twak indriyam. Sparsha grahane karanam. It is the instrument of touch. In the course of time, when the subtle objects are transformed into gross forms, they become objects, they become the objects of touch. The objects of touch and the tactile sense. Tactile sense means a sense of touch. Also develop after this evolution in time. So this can be considered to be a form of evolution. Physical evolution, not biological evolution, physical evolution impelled by God. Sound is the first sense object to exhibit material existence, and from the perception of sound, touch perception evolves, and from touch perception, the perception of sight. That is the way of the gradual evolution of our perceptive objects, the objects of our perception. 36. Mridutvam katinatvam cha shaityam ushnatvam eva cha etat sparshatvam tanmatratvam nabhasvataha. Softness and hardness and cold and heat are the distinguishing attributes of touch, which is characterized as a subtle form of air. Sparshasya lakshanamaha. Sparshatvam swarupa lakshanam ityarthaha. So the underlying characteristic of sparsha set out here. These are the distinguishing attributes. Nabhasvataha vayoho tanmatratvam. The subtle form of air. Tangibility is the proof of form. In actuality, objects are perceived in two different ways. They are either soft or hard, cold or hot, etc. In two different ways means there are two different extremes here. It can be soft, it can be hard, also anything in between. It can be cold or hot. This tangible action of the tactile sense is a result of the evolution of air which is produced from the sky. 27. Chalanam vyuhanam prapta netritvam dravya shabdayoh sarvendriyanam atmatvam vayo karmabhi lakshanam. The action of the air is exhibited in movements, mixing, allowing approach to the objects of sound and other sense perceptions, and providing for the proper functioning of all other senses. Vayor lakshanamaha, identifying characteristics of air. Oh, it's chalanam. Okay, it's not chalanam, chalanam. That which brings about movement. Chalanam, vriksha shakha adehe. It brings about the growth of the branches. Okay, it brings about movement. Okay. Simple. The wind causes the branches of trees to move. Vyuhanam, melanam, trina adehe. And it brings about a collection of objects together, like for instance, grass, various blades of grass, due to certain actions of the wind, they come together. Praptihi, vastu matrena samyogaha. Uniting two different objects. This applies to all kinds of objects. Dravya shabdayoho, dravyasya gandhavataha, घ्राणं प्रति. Netritva. It is the one that brings about the combination of the sense of smell with a fragrant object. So without the gaseous state of matter, without vayu, without air, it is not possible for us to smell. Shaitya adimatas tvacham prati. Shabdasya shrodram prati netritvam. It is the leading element. It leads coldness to the skin. It leads sound to the ear. So here also this is gross, appears to be gross sound. Here also they acknowledge that there is air as the medium through which the sound travels. अतः प्राप्तिः संयोग एव चालनव्यूहन नेतृत्वानि संयोगविशेषे इति ज्ञेयम्. What does this mean? I'm studying some complicated physics right in the middle of Bhagavatam. What does this mean? Pratu. Right. Test. Okay, leave it. That. Strictly speaking, this prapti itself accounts to bring about things together, but then you have chalanam, vyuhanam, netritvam. These are all different forms of uniting various items together. Sarvendriyanam atmatvam sanjivakatvam vayoho karma eva abhi sarvato bhavena lakshanam. Vayu is the enlivener of all the senses. So this activity of air, this is the characteristic of air. Lakshyate anena iti lakshanam karane liyat. Okay, there's a question here. Yes.
Prabhu, this earth, water, air, fire, ether, which is described here, it is the same which science is also studying under the heading of water, air, etc.
No. In from Ayurveda and from other Vedic literature, we understand that water is not simply H2O. Water is what we call liquid. Similarly, air does not refer to only this atmospheric air. So it corresponds to gas. So like that, earth does not refer to the earth. It refers to what we call solids. Because they're all defined in this particular manner. Just like when you look at the definition of earth, you see there, when you look at the definition of earth that's given here, it is not just, you look at the modern English dictionary definition of earth, even taking clay, even if you want to consider it clay, look at that definition and look at this definition, it's different. So it corresponds to solid. Also, these things are studied in Nyaya Vaisheshika, right in the beginning. So these are
And
defined in this manner.
This 34th verse, what was saying about invisible sense objects. No, in 33 purport, I think. How is this invisible sense object? I could not understand what it is, how it comes, why it is.
Externally, there are invisible forms of sense objects. The production of the invisible sense objects is the external activity of the ethereal element, and the circulation of vital air and blood is its internal activity. That subtle forms, here the subtle forms itself refers to invisible sense objects, exist in the ether, has been proven by modern science by transmission of television, by which forms or photographs of one place are transmitted to another place by the action of the ethereal element.
So these are subtle forms of gross sense objects.
Yeah. Like what is, like for instance, I'll tell you, in today's world, we take a photograph of someone. Cameras are digital cameras. So now that photograph, what is it now? It is a file. It is a digital file. Now, what is that digital file actually? What exactly is a digital file? Is it solid? Is it liquid? Is it gas? What exactly is it? What state of matter is it? It is information. It is information. It is simply some 100010 like that. It's just simply information. Anyway, this is all some great scientific research work. Somebody who's interested can sit and work out these. In Bhakti-vaibhava Institute, they try to do all this kind of research to find out what this is. Okay, let's move on. We can perceive the action of the air when the branches of the tree move or when dry leaves on the ground collect together. Similarly, it's only by the action of the air that a body moves. And when the air circulation is impeded, many diseases result. Paralysis, nervous breakdowns, madness, and many other diseases are actually due to an insufficient circulation of air. In the Ayurvedic system, these diseases are treated on the basis of air circulation. If from the beginning one takes care of the process of air circulation, such diseases cannot take place. From the Ayurveda, as well as from the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is clear that so many activities are going on internally and externally because of air alone. And as soon as there is some deficiency in the air circulation, these activities cannot take place. Atmatvam sarva indriya provides for the proper functioning of all the senses. Here it is clearly stated, Netratvam dravya shabdayo carries particles of substances and sound. Substances means fragrant substances, and it carries sound also. Our sense of proprietorship over action is also due to the activity of the air. If the air circulation is stifled, we cannot approach a place after hearing. If someone calls us, we hear the sound because of the air circulation. And if we approach that sound or the place from which the sound, and we approach that sound or the place from which the sound comes. So in other words, it carries sound from the source of sound towards others. It is clearly said in this verse that these are all movements of the air. The ability to detect odors is also due to the action of the air. So that which brings about all of this is what is referred to in Vedic literature as Vayu, air. So this air is obviously not the atmospheric air alone. 38. Vayoscha sparsha tanmatra rupam daiveritadabhut samuthitam tatas tejas chakshu rupopalambanam. By interaction of the air and the sensations of touch, one receives different forms according to destiny. By evolution of such forms, there is fire, and the eye sees different forms in color. Rupa means color sometimes. Rupa also refers to form. Cause of destiny. The touch sensation, the interactions of air, and the situation of the mind, which is produced of the ethereal element. One receives a body according to his previous activities. Needless to say, a living entity transmigrates from one form to another. His form changes according to destiny and by the arrangement of a superior authority, which controls the interaction of air and the mental situation. Form is the combination of different types of sense perception. Predestined activities are the plans of the mental situation and the interaction of air. 39. Dravyakrititvam gunata vyakti samsthatvam cha tejastvam tejasas sadhvi rupamatrasya vrittayaha. My dear mother, the characteristics of form are understood by its dimension. The dimension refers to having akriti or akar. It's having a shape, let's say. Quality and individuality. The form of fire is appreciated by its effulgence. Rupasya lakshanaha. Now he defines rupa. Form. What is form? Dravyasya akrititvam. Akara samparkatvam. It is that which is related to the shape of an object. Gunata. Dravya upasarjanataya pratitihi. That which is perceived as a secondary characteristic of an object. Shabdasitu swatantrena eva pratitihi. Sound is independently directly perceived. Apratyaksha dravyasya sparshadeva swatantrena eva pratitihi. What is this? Sound, touch. Touch is independently perceived of an object which is not directly seen. Rupasya tu na evam. But this is not the case with form. Vyakti samsthatvam, vyaktehi dravyasya ya samstha sanniveshaha. सा एव संस्था यस्य तस्य भावः तत्त्वम्. व्यक्ति संस्थात्म, individuality. यस्य तस्य भावः तत्त्वं द्रव्य परिमाणेन एव यत् परिमाणं प्रतीति इति अर्थः. It is through perception of form that we understand the sizes of objects. We perceive the individuality of objects also. Tejasas, tejastvam, tanmatratvam, prateha. This is dharma. Dharma. Every form that we appreciate has its particular dimensions and characteristics. Dimensions here refers to spatial dimensions. The quality of a particular object is appreciated by its utility. Oh, dravya upasarjanataya pratiti. Utility. Okay, fine. But the form of sound is independent. Forms which are invisible, the form of sound means the nature of sound, is that it is independent. Forms which are invisible can be understood only by touch. That is the independent appreciation of invisible form. Visible forms are understood by analytical study of their constitution, Vyakti samsthatvam, by analytical study of their individual constitution. The constitution of a certain object is appreciated by its internal action. For example, the form of salt is appreciated by the interaction of salty tastes, and the form of sugar is appreciated by the interaction of sweet tastes. Tastes and qualitative constitution are the basic principles in understanding the form of an object. Okay. Yes.
Prabhu, in last line of purport to verse 37, not last line exactly, the entire purport. You said that this order detection, hearing sound of others, and other actions of air distinguishes that it is not atmospheric air, but it looks like
It is not.
it is not atmospheric air alone, but it looks like atmospheric air also can do this
Yes,
order.
correct. Correct. Atmospheric
So
air, atmospheric air is certainly one of these mediums. So we accept this as air. But this is not the only thing that is meant by air in Vedic literature.
okay, it's a subset of air.
Yes, the subset of the Vedic air.
Okay, okay, bro.
40. Dyotanam, Pasanam Panam, Adanam, Himamardhanam, Tejaso Vritiyastveta, Shoshanam, Kshatridevacha. Fire is appreciated by its light and by its ability to cook, to digest, to destroy cold, to evaporate, and give rise to hunger, thirst, eating, and drinking.
Prabhu,
Yes.
Prabhu, sorry to interrupt. When we say that it's a subset of Vedic air, now this modern, the science, the air which science defines, it also says that it is combination of various gases. So those are not the only gases which constitute Vedic air. There is more to it. This is what it means.
No, first of all, we are not defining air as a combination of some other substances. We are defining air in terms of its sensations and so on. There are different sensations and it is defined in a different manner now.
Oh.
What we call air and what they call air is not the same. That should be understood. There is some overlap. Because we are defining air differently. This is how we define air.
Okay.
Okay. Tejaso Lakshanaha. The definition of fire. Earth, water, fire. Radiant energy. Let's take that. Jyotanam, Prakashanam, illumination. Fire is perceived through illumination. That is one of the functions of fire, the element fire. Illumination. Pachanam, Tandula Adehe, cooking, rice, raw rice, and so on. Shut, Shuddha, Trishna, Tadvarena Adanam Pachanam. So it is because of hunger and thirst that one cooks, one digests, and so on. The first symptoms of fire are distribution of light and heat. The existence of fire is also perceived in the stomach. Without fire, we cannot digest what we eat. Without digestion, there is no hunger and thirst or power to eat and drink. When there is insufficient hunger and thirst, it is understood that there is a shortage of fire within the stomach. And the Ayurvedic treatment is performed in connection with the fire element. Agni Mandhyam. See, shortage of fire. Actually, this Agni Mandhyam should be here. Should be put here. Sorry, the wrong brackets. When there is shortage of air within the stomach, open and close bracket, Agni Mandhyam. And the Ayurvedic treatment is performed in connection with the fire element. Since fire is increased by the secretion of bile, the treatment is to increase bile secretion. The Ayurvedic treatment thus corroborates the statements in Srimad Bhagavatam. The characteristic of fire in subduing the influence of cold is known to everyone. Severe cold can always be counteracted by fire. Himamatama. Destroying cold. 41. Rupamatra Vikurvana Tejaso Daivachodita Rasamatra Mabhutasmad Ambho Jihva Rasagraha. By the interaction of fire and the visual sensation, the subtle element taste evolves under superior arrangement. From taste, water is produced, and the tongue which perceives taste is also manifested. Lord Vishnu, who's referred Can anyone hear anything?
Yes, Prabhu.
I don't know where it got stopped.
So 41 sloka we have to start.
Can anyone hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, Prabhu, you're audible.
This is simply misery. Can anyone see this form?
We can see your screen.
Right. I'll read up 41 again. Rupamatra vikurvana tejaso daiva chodita. Rasamatram abhut tasmat ambho jihva rasagraha. By the interaction of fire and the visual element, the subtle element taste evolves under superior arrangement. From taste, water is produced. And the tongue which perceives taste is also manifested. So everywhere there are, see, at the time of creation itself, three things keep coming in stages. First of all, there is the sense object, tanmatra. Then comes the gross element, mahabhuta, which will contain it, which can embed it. Then along with that comes the sense organ. So simultaneously these three come about, or probably one in a sequence, one after another, 1A, 1B, 1C, then 2A, 2B, 2C, 3A, 3B, 3C, like that. So in that way, creation comes about. Everything is meant for the conditioned souls. In today's modern scientific world, when they talk about, they also talk about the origin of the universe. Some big bang, something exploded. Something exploded and something came, and then planets came, this thing came, that thing came, and then in one of the planets, at some point, life came about. And then here we are, after such extreme intellectual evolution, we are now discovering the reality of all these things. But in the Vedic arrangement, this concept itself is not there, some crazy, stupid nonsense. In the Vedic understanding, there's one supreme being, all-powerful being, God, Lord Krishna, has revealed in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. He brings about creation. And creation is meant for the conditioned souls. And since it is meant for the conditioned souls, when he makes the universe fit for the conditioned souls to experience, that is what is called creation. And when he makes an arrangement that disconnects them from the experience of this material world, that is what is called dissolution. And that happens unlimitedly within various spatial domains. Each spatial domain is called the Brahmanda. Here also we notice this in 41. From Tejas, which contains the Rupa Tanmatra, by the impelling of the Supreme Lord. Then we have Rasa Tanmatra, the subtle element, taste. Sometimes for Tanmatras, Prabhupada uses this expression, subtle element. So you have the gross elements, and you have the subtle elements. And then from this, water comes, ambhas. Along with that comes jihva. The tongue is described here as the instrument for acquiring knowledge of taste. Because taste is a product of water, there is always saliva on the tongue. 42. Kashayo madharas tikta. Katpamla iti naikadha. Bhautikānām vikārena rasa eko vibhidyate. Although originally one, taste becomes manifold as astringent, sweet, bitter, pungent, sour, and salty due to contact with other substances. Rasasya lakshanaha kashaya iti. The characteristic of the rasata matra, taste. Sound, touch, form, taste. Kashaya iti. Kashaya, astringent. Kashaya adishu lavanaha api drashtavyaha. It should be understood that saltiness is also meant to be in this list, implied to be in this list. Bhautikānām samsargi dravyānām ya ekaham madhura eva sanekam anekadha vidyate sa rasa ityartha. So that which is perceived in various ways through various combinations of substances, that is taste. 43. Kledanam pindanam tripti. Prananapyayanondanam. Tapapanodo bhuyastvam ambhaso vritayastvimah. The characteristics of water are exhibited by its moistening other substances, coagulating various mixtures, causing satisfaction, maintaining life, softening things, driving away heat, incessantly supplying itself to reservoirs of water, and refreshing by slaking thirst. Ambhasaha lakshanamaha. These are the characteristics of, he now speaks about the characteristics of ambhas, water. Kledanam, ardrikaranam. Kledanam, moistening other substances. Pindanam, mriddade pindikaranam. Coagulating. What does coagulating mean? It will be useful to find out what it means. Triptihi, tripti tatrutvam. Tripti means causing satisfaction. Prananam, jivanam, maintaining life. Apomaya prana iti shrute. But the Shruti clearly says life is full of water, which means life is fully dependent on water. Apyayana, trid vaiklavya nivartanam. That which brings about refreshment. That means that which takes away thirst. Udanam, mritu karana. What is it? Mridu vikrama. Oh, what is this? 43. Mritu. Should be short. Mritu karana. Udanam, softening. Undanam iti pathe. Apyayana. Oh, he has a different reading. Pranana apyayana udanam. He also accepts the reading undanam. We have undanam. Undanam iti pathepi saevartha. Undanam also means the same. Bhuyastvam, being in abundance. Kupa adav udhritasya api punah udgamaha. Being in abundance means even when you take water away from a well, more and more water keeps coming. incessantly supplying itself to reservoirs of water and refreshing by slaking thirst. Starvation can be mitigated by drinking water. It is sometimes found that if a person who has taken a vow to fast takes a little water at intervals, the exhaustion of fasting is at once mitigated. In the Vedas, it is also stated, Apomaya pranaha. Life depends on water. With water, anything can be moistened or dampened. Flour dough can be prepared with a mixture of water. That must be this pindanam, pindikaram. Or maybe R3 later. Mud is made by mixing earth with water. Is this pindanam? Could be. As stated in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, water is a cementing ingredient of different material elements. Tejo, Vari, Mridam. If you build a house, water is actually the constituent in making the bricks. Fire, water, and air are the exchanging elements for the entire material manifestation. So look at this. Fire, water, and air are the exchanging elements for the entire material manifestation. But water is most prominent. In Bhagavatam first verse, we have Tejo, Vari, Mridam. Tejaha, gaseous state. Vari, liquid state. Mridam, solid state. But water is most prominent. Also, excessive heat can be reduced simply by pouring water on the heated field. Okay. Yes.
Zero question. Prabhu, this when you were describing about water supplying itself in abundance in a well, we take away, still it comes. So a person, he may define that because there is water, certain water level, that's why it is coming.
No, it is found in abundance. That is the point. There is so much water even below the surface. Water is in abundance. Water is in abundance. That is the point. Suppose you take earth away, that place becomes filled with more earth automatically. No. But when you take water, then water keeps coming. No. So the arrangement of God is such that water is meant to be in abundance. One thing we notice, everything is life-centered. It is not that life is an accident and it is somehow there. Everything is life-centered. Everything is meant for the maintenance of living beings. So this is a description of creation in the proper sense. It is created by God for the living beings. So naturally, he has to supply everything that is needed for them. So everything is described in terms of how they are fulfilling the necessities of the living beings.
Yes.
44. Rasamatra vikurvana dambhaso daiva choditad gandhamatram abhut tasmad prithvi ghranastu gandhagaha. Due to the interaction of water with the taste perception, the subtle element order evolves under superior arrangement. Thence, the earth and the olfactory sense, by which we can variously experience the aroma of the earth, become manifest. So here, from ambhas, water, which contains the tanmatra of rasa or taste, by superior arrangement, by the impelling of providence or destiny or Lord Vishnu. Then we have the tanmatra of gandha, smell, odor, smell. From smell comes earth. See, in today's world, we cannot imagine how this we would say that there has to be solid, and then only you can smell it. Everywhere. But see, notice how it comes. First of all, there is taste. Then there is water. Similarly, there is smell. Then there is earth. Ghranastu gandha gaha. If we go by this sequence, then after earth comes the olfactory sense of smell. It is an entirely different presentation. 45. Karambha puti saurabhya shanto gram ladibhi pratak. Dravya vayavaishamyad gandha eko vibhidyate. Order, although one, becomes many as mixed, offensive, fragrant, mild, strong, acidic, and so on, according to the proportions of associated substances. Gandhasya lakshnamaha, karambha, mishra gandhaha. Karambha is mixed smell. Yatha vyanjanadinam hindvadi samskare. Just as when you cook sabjis, you add hingu. Hingu is hing, no? And various other spices. Then the tastes they change and the smell also changes. Utihi, durgandha, offensive smell. Mixed smell is sometimes perceived in foodstuffs prepared from various ingredients such as vegetables mixed with different kinds of spices and asafoetida. Bad odors are perceived in filthy places. Good smells are perceived from camphor, menthol, and similar other products. Pungent smells are perceived from garlic and onions. And acidic smells are perceived from turmeric and similar sour substances. The original aroma is the odor emanating from the earth, and when it is mixed with different substances, this odor appears in different ways. Yes.
So if this presentation is completely different from normal, I don't know if I can use normal term. Like from usually people gather knowledge, like first there is substance, then only there is mention of smell, and this is opposite of it. So this could be one more reason that why people get so bewildered when they are introduced to such statements or such presentation. They say it's
First of all,
mythology or
sensations are more important than the objects of sensations. Like in a dream experience, how will you explain a dream experience? Scientists are still trying to figure out what the hell is this dream experience. They know it is connected with certain brain states, but they cannot explain what a dream experience is. Because it is so vivid that you are unable to, inside a dream, you cannot even suspect that it is not the waking state. It is so identical. So what is it? In the dream state and waking state, in both of them, you're in contact with sensations. You're not in contact with the objects of sensations. In the wakeful state, you're in contact with sensations and the objects of sensations, gross elements. In the dream state, you're only in contact with sensations. You're not in contact with the gross elements. So which should be more important? Sensation should be more important. More than 20 years back itself, there was somebody from Bhakti-vaibhava Institute who once he said, modern science only has 5 problems, which basically they are not able to understand. Other things they have understood to various degrees, which they're simply trying to, of course, perpetually they try to improve. But there are 5 areas they don't understand. One is the absolute reference. And then he said, we have Ishvara, God. Then another is, they don't understand the nature of conscious living beings, consciousness in the conscious living beings, Jiva. They do not know the nature of this material nature itself. They don't know what this material nature is, what is happening. We know it is there, we are studying different things, but what it is, why it is, these things they don't know. Prakriti. They have no idea about the arrow of time. Why does time always push in one direction? They don't know the nature of time, Kala. Nor are they able to understand what actions yield what kind of long-term reactions for living beings. Karma. Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti, Kala, Karma. These are the ones that they don't know. Well, we are specifically focusing on these five. So when it comes to material nature, what is our experience of material nature? How to explain it in terms of our experience of material nature? That has to be seen now. That is the last thing they want to do. Consciousness is the last thing that they're trying to study. Now some people are coming up. This is much more sensible.
Okay, Guru.
46. Bhavanam Brahmanasthanam. Dharanam Sadvisheshanam. Sarvasattva Gunodbhedah Prithvi Vritti Lakshanam. The characteristics of the functions of earth can be perceived by modeling forms of the Supreme Brahman, by constructing places of residence, by preparing pots to contain water, etc. In other words, the earth is the place of sustenance for all elements. Prithvyah Lakshana. Characteristics of earth. Brahmanaha. Parameshwarasya Bhavana. Pratima Nirmana Karanatvam. Earth can be used for modeling deities of the Supreme Lord. Sthanam. Jaladi Lakshanataya. Nairapekshena Sthitihi. It can be used, earth itself exists independently as distinct from water and so on. Dharanam. What is it? Jaladyo. What is this verse? 46. Dharanam Jaladyadharatvam. Jaladhyadharatvam. Jaladyadharatvam. Dharanam indicates that it holds water and so on. Water needs to be held. Water needs something else. And that something else is earth. Sadvisheshana. Why is it Satyam? Satam Akashadinam. Satam. Akashadinam Visheshanam. Why does it say Satam Akashadinam? Visheshana Hetuhu Malinam Akasham Dusara Nilaha Ityadi Prativi Yataha Ityartha. Okay, it helps us distinguish different types of sky, water, fire, and air. How does it help in distinguishing between them? Like we know that the sky is contaminated, the wind is dusty, and so on. These perceptions are caused because of earth. Sarvesham sattvanam praninam tadgunanam cha pungstvadinam udbhedah parinama visheshai prakritikarannam. This is a place for manifestation of the qualities of all kinds of living creatures. Different elements such as sound, sky, air, fire, and water can be perceived in the earth. Another feature of the earth, especially mentioned here, is that earth can manifest different forms of the Supreme Personality of God. By the statement of Kapilas, it is confirmed that the Supreme Personality of God is Brahman has innumerable forms, which are described in the scriptures by manipulation of earth and its products, such as stone, wood, and jewels. These forms of the Supreme Lord can be present before our eyes. When a form of Lord Krishna or Lord Vishnu is manifested by presentation of a statue made of earth, it is not imaginary. The earth gives shape to the Lord's forms as described in the scriptures. In the Brahma Samhita, there is description of Lord Krishna's lands, the variegatedness of the spiritual abode, and the forms of the Lord playing a flute with his spiritual body. All these forms are described in the scriptures, and when they are thus presented, they become worshipable. They are not imaginary, as the Mayavada philosophy says. Sometimes the word bhavana is misinterpreted as imagination, but bhavana does not mean imagination. It means giving actual shape to the description of Vedic literature. Earth is the ultimate transformation of all living entities and their respective modes of material nature. 47. Nabho guna visheshortho yasya tachrutramuchyate vayor guna visheshortho yasya tatsparshanam viduhu. The sense whose object of perception is sound is called the auditory sense. And that whose object of perception is touch is called the tactile sense. Shrotra adinam shabdadi grahakatvam uttam. It has been stated that the ears and so on grasp sound and so on respectively. Tesham cha lakshanam taddeva. Their defining characteristics are that itself. Ityaha. With this in mind, he speaks the current verse. Navasaha guna visheshaha. The distinctive characteristic of sky, which is sound, is the object of perception of the auditory sense. The distinctive characteristic of air, which is touch, is the object of perception of the tactile sense. Shabdaha yasyartha vishayaha tashnotram. Sound is one of the qualifications of the sky. Sound is found in the sky. Let me say like this. And the subject matter for hearing. Similarly, touch is the qualification of the air and is the subject of the touch sensation. 48. Tejo guna vishesho tho yasya tat chakshu uchyate. Ambho guna vishesho tho yasya tad rasanam viduhu. Bhumer guna vishesho tho yasya sat khrana uchyate. This is very carefully defined here. Very interesting. The sense whose object of perception is form, the distinctive characteristic of fire is a sense of sight. The sense whose object of perception is taste, the distinctive characteristic of water is known as a sense of taste. Finally, the sense whose object of perception is odor, the distinctive characteristic of earth is called the sense of smell. Okay, we'll stop with that. Okay. Anshakal Patru Vyashik Pasim Dikhi Avacha Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha.